It started with a tremor. Not the kind you feel in your bones, but the kind that creeps into a room like a shadow that doesn't belong. The chamber was packed, tiered with over 100 representatives from over a dozen galaxies. All colors, shapes, languages, some too bizarre to describe. But all of them had one thing in common. They had no respect for humans. Council Protocol Room 9X had never seen a human walk through its curved doors, not since Earth was granted provisional observation status in the Galactic Order. They were newcomers, late bloomers, loud, chaotic, emotional, useful in war, unpredictable in peace, and now here came Ambassador Cade Nolan, first human ever granted diplomat status. He walked in slow, calm, hands at his sides. No weapon, no translator needed. He didn't wear any armor. Just the standard Earth-given diplomatic black suit, tight at the collar. His eyes scanned the crowd once. No fear. That's what ticked some of them off right away. His calm. His presence didn't match the species file they had on humans. Some of the counselors exchanged signals. Silent. Fast. Almost nervous. Cade stopped in front of the speaker's pedestal, looked up at the Galactic High Executor, an 8-limbed, silver-skinned giant from the Talari Dominion. He cleared his throat once. The mic adjusted. The lights dimmed. "I represent Earth, a member of the United Human Colonies," he said clearly. "We were summoned under the accusation of sabotage on the outpost of Lyrae 7. I'm here to address that." Murmurs spread like sparks. The representative of the Jalek hive leaned forward, its mandibles clicking. "Your species was warned, Ambassador. Lyrae 7 was not to be approached. It was protected territory. We had no ships near that system. That explosion, that wasn't us." The council stirred. Another voice cut through, sleek, smooth, threatening. "You expect us to believe your kind didn't meddle?" asked Ambassador Retkar of the Velhri Ascendancy, a race that looked like upright eels, always slick with biofluid. "Human colonies are spreading like infestation. Chaos follows wherever you go." Cade smiled faintly. "Funny. That's how we describe most of you." The chamber fell into silence. He'd crossed a line. Everyone knew it. Even he knew it. And he didn't care. That was the moment things shifted. The Jalek envoy gave a high-pitched signal. 4 guards appeared. Tall, armored, from a species bred for enforcement. Not quite military, but close enough. "This meeting is terminated. The human will be taken for questioning. Earth's status is suspended pending investigation." Cade didn't move. The guards stepped forward. Slow, deliberate. Their boots echoed on the chamber floor. He looked at them, then back at the council. "You're making a mistake," he said, voice low. One of the guards reached for his arm. That was the moment it all went sideways. The lights flickered. Just once. In that blink of time, the temperature dropped, just enough for every species in the room to feel it, and then Cade moved. No, he changed. It was subtle at first. His skin lost its pinkish hue, turned pale, then translucent. His eyes dimmed, pupils fading into dark pits like twin wells. His voice dropped into something layered, like 3 beings speaking through him. "You think you know what humanity is," he said quietly, "but all you've seen are our explorers, our dreamers, our soldiers." The guard stepped back, but it was too late. Something shifted in the air, like pressure crashing down. Cade's body pulsed. Not grew, just unfolded, like he'd been compressed into something too small. A terrible hum filled the chamber, beyond hearing, deeper than sound. Some species clutched their heads. A few screamed. "Let me show you what lies beneath." One of the guards raised a weapon. Too slow. Cade didn't touch him. Didn't need to. The guard's chest just crumpled inward, like paper crushed in an invisible fist, Gasps, screams, panic. The Velry ambassador slipped backward, slithering out of his chair. What are you? Cade turned his gaze toward him. You wanted to see the human threat. Now you've summoned it. And then he smiled. But it wasn't human. Not anymore. The air in Council Chamber 9X thickened, not with smoke or fire, but with dread. The guards who had dared approach Ambassador Cade Nolan now lay sprawled on the floor, broken, bent in unnatural angles, expressions frozen mid-scream. The echo of that unseen force still pulsed through the chamber like a second heartbeat, and no one could explain it. No weapon had been fired, no technology triggered, just presence. A raw, suffocating presence radiating from the human form still standing calmly at the center. Except now, it wasn't quite human anymore. The thing that called itself Cade lifted his head, and his skin shimmered like dark glass rippling over molten metal. Not armor, not tech, something biological, alive, ancient. Beneath the surface, veins pulsed with deep red light, like magma coursing just under the surface of a world too young to cool. You all call yourselves advanced, Cade said, voice now layered with a deep resonance that shook the columns of the chamber. You rule sectors, you boast about peace, yet you operate from fear, from secrets. You summon violence with politics and dress executions in ceremony. The Jalek Hive envoy tried to issue a retreat signal, but the signal pulse was instantly silenced, crushed in transmission. Cade turned to the center dais, where the High Executor of the Galactic Council sat frozen in place, his shimmering limbs twitching in confusion and calculation. Explain, the Executor demanded, his voice metallic and strained, trying to project dominance. What are you? Cade tilted his head slowly. Studying the Executor like a child might study an insect crawling too close to its foot. You thought Earth was weak. You thought the humans who came before were just variables, trouble, emotional, primitive. You never once asked why we survived everything you threw at us. A hologram flickered to life, unprompted from Cade's wrist. It wasn't standard galactic tech. It was something else, older, grimier, but pulsing with power. On it, an image, Lyrae 7, once a quiet outpost, now a burned, scarred planet wrapped in ash and orbiting debris. The scene zoomed into a crater, deep, clean, surgical. That wasn't sabotage, Cade continued. It was a strike, deliberate, precise. Human miners dead, 73 of them, no weapons, no defenses, just workers. The chamber began to stir, but Cade wasn't finished. You weren't just testing our territory. You were testing our restraint. His voice dropped to a whisper so cold it stilled even the insectoid chatter of the lower tiers. And you failed to consider who exactly you were provoking. A small orb detached from the hologram and floated mid-air, a memory sphere. Old Earth tech. Most aliens dismissed them as crude, until it activated. A voice filled the chamber. Female, fierce, familiar. Ambassador Nolan, you are hereby authorized to initiate Protocol Iron Mercy. I repeat, Iron Mercy is approved. Show them what we buried. Some of the older council members twitched at the phrase. Others glanced around, searching for recognition, but most didn't know what it meant. Until the lights flickered again. This time for longer. Then, complete blackout. No systems, no connection, no sensors, nothing. Panic rose. Some tried to teleport. They couldn't. Others activated comms. Silence. When emergency backup power finally kicked in, only a faint emergency glow lit the chamber. The vast council dome, once a monument to peace, now looked like a tomb. And Cade was no longer alone. They emerged from shadows, corners, from within the walls, 6 of them, Humans, but not like any they'd seen before. Their bodies were laced with heavy exoskin, biomechanical armor fused with flesh, no mouths, no visible eyes. They moved silently, like thoughts given form. "These are not soldiers," Cade said. "They are witnesses." The Velry ambassador trembled. This is war. You bring assassins into the chamber." Cade didn't respond. He didn't need to. The witnesses walked between the council tiers, not attacking, not speaking, just watching, breathing. Standing still long enough for every race to feel their own fear in full. "Do you know why humanity was locked out of deep council seats for so long?" Cade asked, stepping forward slowly. "It wasn't because we weren't ready. It was because you weren't ready." He turned slowly in a circle, speaking to all species now. "You feared what we would become. You feared the thing behind our ambition, behind our resilience. You feared that when pushed far enough, a human doesn't just retaliate. They evolve, they adapt, they devour what threatens them." The High Executor slammed a massive fist on the control plate. "Enough! You dare violate sacred chamber law, you bring weapons, threats, murder. I bring proof," Cade said flatly. Another memory orb dropped from his wrist. This time the chamber saw something different. A flash of documents. Earth records, dated over a century ago, top-secret logs, redacted, then unredacted, Project Orphic Bone. A subtitle, Biological Advancement Through Existential Threat Response. Footage, Earth soldiers in ancient armor, then the same soldiers, changing, flesh rewriting itself, nerves growing faster, bones restructured under trauma. One soldier stood out. He was Cade, but younger, smaller, his body twisting in the footage under pressure. Screaming, then silent, as his form stabilized into something other. He had survived the impossible. "Humans were designed by pressure," Cade said quietly. "Shaped by extinction-level threats. Our history is soaked in near-death, and every time, we changed." He looked up slowly, eyes burning like black coals in the dim light. "You thought your attack on Lyrae 7 was the beginning of something. But it was the last mistake you'll ever be allowed to make in ignorance." Silence. Finally, the High Executor leaned forward, voice lower, calculated. "What do you want, human?" Cade stepped forward. The floor didn't even echo under him now. "Respect." He turned to the Velry ambassador. "Restitution. You send what you took. You admit the strike." He pointed to the Jalek Hive representative. "You open your data vaults. We want every log of unauthorized surveillance on human colonies." Finally, he faced the executor again. "And we want a seat, full seat, Earth, on the High Council." The silence was deafening. The tension became a living thing in the room. The executor narrowed his eyes. "Or what?" Cade took a step forward, voice soft. "Or you see the rest of us." He turned his wrist. One final orb hovered up. This time it showed Earth. But not the Earth they knew, not the cities, not the colonies. A massive facility deep underground, older than any colony, older than any war, rows upon rows of sealed chambers. Inside each, humans, sleeping, breathing, changing. "We're not a threat because of what we've done," Cade said. "We're a threat because of what we haven't used yet." That was when the chamber broke. The Velry ambassador bolted, sliding toward the exit. A witness stepped in his path. The Velry tried to speak. His voice cracked. His fluid covering began to boil slightly under the gaze of the silent human. He dropped to the floor, still breathing. But something had changed in him. Broken. The rest of the council got the message. Cade turned and walked back to the center. "I came here alone," he said. "Peacefully. I offered truth. You answered with fear. You tried to control us with law. Now, you'll listen, or next time we bring something far older than diplomacy." The lights came back on. The chamber systems rebooted. Emergency shields flickered back online. Comm relays stabilized. But no one moved. The witnesses disappeared the way they came, into walls, shadows, thought. And Cade stood, once again looking like a human in a black suit. Simple, calm. No weapons, just a diplomat. But now the chamber looked at him differently, as if they had finally seen not a man, but a message, one carved in evolution, buried in fear, and brought to light through blood. The council chamber lay quiet after the storm. No one moved, not even the air systems seemed to breathe properly. When the lights had come back, and the witnesses had melted into shadows, all that remained was silence, and the echo of a truth too big to ignore. Ambassador Cade Nolan had walked out without a single hand raised against him. No one stopped him. No one dared. Behind him 4 bodies remained, the guards who had tried to restrain him. Dead, or something worse. Their flesh hadn't just been crushed, it had been rewritten. The autopsies would show no cause of death. Their nervous systems simply ceased. Their DNA altered. Their last thoughts unrecorded. The council didn't hold another session for 6 days, not because of mourning, not because of repair, because they didn't know what the hell to do next. In those 6 days, across hundreds of systems, the word spread like a virus with no cure. Earth is not what we thought. In the orbital citadel of the Velry Ascendancy, the high coil slithered from wall to wall in agitation. The chamber was drenched in its natural biofluid, now steaming from its body's agitation. Rhet Kar, humiliated by the human, had not spoken since his return. He lay submerged in a nutrient pod, mind disconnected from his form. Catatonic. "What did we miss?" the coil hissed. "Their species profile never spoke of this metamorphic evolution, these witnesses, this Project Orphic bone. Nothing." A voice bubbled up from a data sifter, a cybernetic eel attached to the wall. "They kept it hidden, High Coil, even among themselves. A black project, Cold War-level secrecy, older than their interstellar age, possibly even pre-contact. They hid it well. They buried it, High Coil. Even their colonies didn't know." The High Coil's eyes narrowed. "Then it's not just a threat, it's a lie. An Earth-wide deception that puts every council species at risk." He slithered toward the signal pillar and slammed his bioform into it. "Summon the Hidden Fang. Prepare contingency plans. If Earth moves again, we don't wait for another witness to arrive." On the mining world of Jaraxxus 4, things were quieter, but no less tense. Humans had arrived. 3 ships, unmarked, no fleet ID, but everyone recognized them. No weapons visible, no military escort. Just one simple transmission. "Reclamation Team, Diplomatic Order 77X, do not interfere." The alien overseers of the mining operations, mostly Dreltha Consortium members, watched as humans walked through their facilities, checking logs, speaking to workers, scanning for something. Then they left. Except they took 5 aliens with them. The message was clear. These 5 had something to do with Lyrae 7, and they would face justice. Earth-style. The Dreltha tried to protest, but by then, their orbital satellites had already malfunctioned. Communications scrambled. Internal security fried. 3 of their administrators experienced vivid hallucinations of drowning in their own breath. The next day, every Dreltha operation near human colonies paused. Some never reopened. Back on Earth, deep beneath the Siberian Black Vault, the central command of Project Orphic Bone, Ambassador Nolan stepped out of his transport with eyes still glowing faintly from what he'd released inside Council Chamber 9 de Sox. The hallway lights dimmed automatically as he passed, sensing the anomaly in his aura. Dozens of guards didn't salute him. They didn't even look at him. Most of them had been trained not to. Waiting for him in the vault chamber was Director Vera, head of the project. A woman in her late 50s, with cybernetic plates across her skull and a permanent IV in her left arm. She was the only person Cade respected enough to pause for. "You let them see it," she said without turning around. "They forced my hand. They weren't ready. They were never going to be ready." She turned then, her face pale but calm. "You risked too much." Cade's jaw tightened. "They killed our people. Lyrae 7 wasn't just sabotage. They were studying what would happen if they removed humans under peace protocols. A stress test." Vera's fingers danced across a holopad, bringing up raw video from the outpost, not the public footage. The real files, security feeds recovered through backdoor uplinks. She pointed to a frame, an alien figure, blurred by shielding, planting something near the refinery power core. Not a bomb, a decay spike. Slow, subtle, untraceable. "They wanted it to look like an accident," Vera said. "That's why they waited for the shift change. Less witnesses, fewer bodies, less noise." "They failed," Cade replied. "Now we return the favor." Vera turned to him sharply. "You're escalating." "I'm warning." "No," she said. "You're becoming." Cade didn't deny it. She stepped closer. "You know what Protocol Iron Mercy does to the subject. You're not stable." "I'm not supposed to be." She sighed, rubbing her temples. "What happens when the Council panics? When they unite? Not against each other, but against us?" Cade stared into the dark beyond the vault. "Then they'll finally understand that unity doesn't belong to them anymore." The Galactic Council reconvened on Day 7. The chamber was reduced to half capacity. Entire species had withdrawn. Emergency meetings were being held in isolated systems. Secure channels were flooded with one question: what is humanity hiding? Inside the council, the atmosphere was tense. The Jalek Hive arrived cloaked, no members physically present, only remote voice interfaces. The Velry came heavily guarded, with full-body armor and neural blockers. Even the executors carried dampeners. When the session began, the chair remained empty for Earth, for 20 whole minutes. Then the lights shifted again. Not blacked out this time, just dimmed to 40%. Cade entered, alone, no guards, no entourage, no weapons. He stood before them and waited. The High Executor cleared his throat. "You have our attention, human." Cade nodded. "Then listen closely." A new projection unfolded in the air above him. It showed a star map, vast, familiar to many. Then Cade zoomed in, on a section most of them had ignored for centuries, a region near the galactic rim, barren, supposedly uninhabitable. Radiation belts, unstable space currents. He pointed. "Here lies something we found." The map revealed an anomaly, a black, pulsing rift. Not created, not natural, not ours. He turned slowly. "You thought Earth was your problem." Then he pointed to the rift. "This is why Earth evolved the way it did. This anomaly first appeared 9,000 years ago. Around the same time humans began their earliest civilizations. We've tracked its pulse patterns. They match the trauma cycles of human history." Stunned silence. "You're saying your species is responding to that?" "No," Cade said, eyes glowing again. "I'm saying we were made for it." The chamber broke into shouts. Disbelief, fear, accusation. The High Executor pounded his platform. "What kind of madness is this? You're implying your species is a failsafe? Cade smiled. No, we're the firewall. He cut off the map. The rift vanished. Then he stepped back and let the fear do its work. You've spent centuries calling us primitive, dangerous, emotional. You feared what we might become. And still, despite all your fleets, your AI, your gods, you couldn't touch that rift. You couldn't even approach it. But we can. He turned to walk out, but paused. You're scared of what I showed you in that chamber. He glanced over his shoulder. You should be more scared of what I didn't show you. And then he left, leaving behind a chamber that would never be the same. Across 1,000 star systems, the galaxy held its breath. Cade Nolan's message didn't just shake the council chambers, it cracked the foundation of what most species believed about human history, about their own safety, about reality. A firewall. That was the word he used. But against what? That wasn't just a threat, it was a warning. And perhaps the most terrifying part was that humanity seemed less like a threat and more like a response. But the real storm was only beginning. Deep inside the Varkon Nebula, within the ancient fortress of Avanhal's Loop, the Black Spiral met in secret. These weren't diplomats, these weren't leaders. These were the quiet architects of survival. The ones who didn't trust law, treaties, or words. There were only 6 of them. One from each of the dominant species outside the Council's spotlight. Old races, shadow empires, ones who remembered the time before the Council, before order. At the center of the table, a single hologram flickered. The face of Ambassador Cade Nolan paused mid-sentence as he pointed to the galactic rift. The voice of High Seer Ulthar, a gelatinous being from the Shattermind cluster, rippled across the chamber. We allowed the humans to rise. They should have stayed in their gravity wells. Now they claim they are guardians against something else, something older? The creature beside him, cloaked in armor made of organic bone, hissed. Then they know about the vaults. Eyes, or whatever counted as them, turned. You believe Earth has contact? Not just contact, said the armored being. They were built for this, or built by it. The chamber fell silent. The only sound was the echo of an old term. Forbidden. Ancient. The architects. No one had spoken that name aloud in centuries. On Earth, Cade Nolan sat in a quiet room, far below the public chambers of the United Human Colonies. Not a war room. Not a laboratory. This was a vault lined with books. Ancient. Real. Paper and ink. Sealed in atmosphere-proof glass. Titles like The Genesis Equation and Redshift, the Birth Algorithm filled the walls. Across from him sat Dr. Mara Delane, the last surviving member of the Project Chrono seeding team, a black-budget program older than most spacefaring nations. She was dying, skin brittle, voice shaking, but her eyes still burned with clarity. You said it, didn't you? She asked. Cade nodded. I had to. She sighed. Then they'll never trust you again. They already didn't. She looked down at the book in her lap. The Inherited Flame. A manifesto banned, supposedly fiction, but it wasn't. We never proved it, Mara whispered. Not entirely, just patterns, fractals in human DNA, responses to stimuli that shouldn't exist, memories that predate memory. Cade looked her in the eyes. Tell me the truth. Was humanity made? She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pointed to the ceiling, where a slow-moving hologram showed the rift Cade had revealed to the Council. That anomaly didn't just appear 9,000 years ago. It opened. The math proves it. And Earth, formed within a perfect orbital distance, shielded by an oversized moon, fertile with metals, organics, and anomalies in magnetic field behavior. Cade swallowed. What are you saying? Mara smiled weakly. I'm saying Earth didn't just survive the cosmic lottery. She leaned in. I think Earth was placed. Meanwhile, in a hidden system beneath a red dwarf star, the Council's secret military program, codenamed Project Purity, was activated for the first time in over 2 centuries. They had prepared for this possibility, not against Earth specifically, but for any species that grew too fast, too loud. Galactic Control Protocol Red, unleash containment fleets, deploy null space stabilizers, destroy the target, wipe it clean. The plan was clear. Earth cannot be allowed to unify the outer colonies under fear. Humanity must be disarmed, if not erased. A fleet of 17 warships from different species under one secret banner began slow movement toward Sector 99984 Beta, toward Sol. They didn't carry nukes. They didn't need them. They carried gravity seeds, devices that could collapse a planet's orbit, slowly pulling it into its star. No noise, no war, just a quiet death. Back on Earth, deep in the Pacific Trench, the final witness awoke. This one was not like the others. The previous 6 had been humans altered by trauma, shaped in secret labs. Volunteers, survivors, experiments. But this one was different. It had never been human at all. Its name was Revenant Zero, a creature grown in the abyss, spliced with every genetic fail-safe humanity had buried over generations, half myth, half monster. When it rose from the chamber, the water around it boiled. It didn't speak. It remembered. And it hated. Cade stood alone on the balcony of the High Command Tower, staring at Earth's moon. His mind burned with Mara's words. Placed, not born, a planet set in motion, designed to create a species that could withstand what others couldn't. Could it be true? Were humans ever really natural? Had they always been a weapon waiting to be triggered? The wind howled behind him as a message came through his neural uplink. Incoming transmission. Code black. Fleet signatures detected. Approaching from deep space. Cloaked. Multi-species coordination. ETA, 72 hours. Target trajectory. Sol. Cade didn't speak. He didn't blink. He just whispered, "They're coming." Behind him, alarms began to rise. All across Earth, emergency protocols ignited. Defense satellites realigned. Sleeper colonies received encrypted alerts. The witnesses stirred. War wasn't declared, but it had arrived. The fleet moved in silence. 17 warships cloaked in deep space distortion fields, drifting through the black like ghosts. No communications, no broadcasts, no insignias, just null space signatures and gravity seeds primed for planetary collapse. They didn't look like a fleet preparing for war. They looked like a surgical tool, meant to cut Earth out of existence without warning. Project Purity didn't believe in declarations, only in resets. The ships closed in on Sol System's outer edge. No resistance, no interference. As if Earth hadn't even seen them. But Earth had. 3 hours earlier, Ambassador Cade Nolan stood inside the Mirror Core, a chamber buried beneath Greenland's ancient ice shelf. The walls weren't made of stone or steel, but of something much older. A material Earth hadn't produced. A structure that had always been there, discovered, not built. Inside it hovered the Mirror Core, a black sphere, rotating slowly, suspended mid-air. Around it danced slivers of light that blinked in patterns beyond comprehension. Time seemed off in this place, slower or too fast. Cade stood before it, flanked by 2 witnesses. He wasn't alone. Dr. Mara Delane sat in her chair, weaker now but alive, and across from her stood Revenant Zero. The creature pulled from the abyss, a living puzzle of DNA, silent and massive, draped in biotech armor that grew like muscle. You're certain? Cade asked. Mara nodded faintly. They're coming. Purity fleet. Null seeds locked. We won't see them. Just feel the sun begin to swell. They won't speak first, he said. They can't afford to. Not after what you did at the council. He turned to the mirror core. It pulsed once. The room shifted in color, flickering like a memory. This was buried for a reason, Mara whispered. Even we don't understand what it is. Cade didn't look away. I don't need to understand it. I just need it to wake up. At the edge of the Sol system, the Purity fleet entered Saturn's orbit. They didn't pause. They didn't observe. One ship, the CS-41 Varn Tal, prepared the first gravity seed. The device looked like a small moon, silent, smooth, humming with unstable energy. It was designed to detonate near a planet's magnetic field, disrupting its rotation, throwing its core into chaos. Earth wouldn't explode. It would collapse. Slowly, elegantly, painless, by cosmic standards. The countdown began. T-minus 13 hours. They never made it to hour 12. The first sign came from Mars. A low-frequency pulse, undetectable to most sensors, began emanating from its southern pole. It wasn't electromagnetic, but something deeper, gravitic resonance, like the planet's crust was speaking to space itself. Then Earth responded. Not from satellites, not from weapons, from the oceans, across the Pacific, the Atlantic, the Indian, vortices formed at precise coordinates. Energy flared, not heat, not light, memory, stored in water, locked in salt. For decades, maybe longer, Earth had been listening, and now it spoke back. Every major observatory in the system blinked offline in the same second. In their place, a single symbol, a circle, inside it, a vertical line, and through that line, a pulse. Do not proceed further. The Purity Fleet's commander, a synthetic intelligence known as Sovran A3, paused its calculations. Non-hostile warning, it noted. Unknown source, non-organic. It continued the countdown, T-minus 11:44. That was when the mirror core opened. No one saw it happen. Even those in the chamber didn't notice the exact moment. One instant it was a sphere. The next it had unfolded into a spiral, casting lights on the ceiling like a galaxy being born in reverse. The witnesses stepped back. Revenant Zero tilted its head, a low hum escaping its body. Not fear. Recognition. Mara clutched the side of her chair. It's active. The spiral hovered mid-air. Then it spoke, not in words, in pulses, images, a stream of memories too old for language, too vast for history, and they went into Cade. He didn't scream, but something inside him broke, or unlocked. He saw Earth, not as it was, but as it had always been. A seed, planted deliberately, designed to grow a species capable of containing chaos, not preventing it, not defeating it, just holding it back. He saw the rift, an eye in space, never blinking, always watching. It had been closed once, sealed by a force too ancient to name, but seals degrade, and when it opened again, the architects knew the galaxy wouldn't survive it, not without something new, something dangerous. So they forged humans, not perfect, just perfectly adaptable, born in chaos, thriving in trauma, evolving under pressure, every war, every plague, every extinction event, intentional, refinement through fire. Cade fell to his knees. The Mirror Core's final message burned through his mind. You were not made to lead. You were made to last. In orbit, the Purity Fleet began to shift uneasily. Their sensors were blinding with false readings. Black holes forming near the asteroid belt, then vanishing. Ships detecting echoes of themselves from 5 seconds in the future. The gravity seed arming core melted, not exploded, melted into words. 3 words. We see you. Sovrane 3 attempted to eject the device. It was already gone. Then, without warning, Earth vanished. To outside observers, Earth simply disappeared from all scans. No energy burst, no movement, no propulsion. One frame it was there. The next, it wasn't. The Purity fleet froze. Panic rippled silently through the command codes. The captains couldn't speak. The AI couldn't process. Then Earth returned. Exactly 0.7 seconds later. Same orbit, same rotation, but everything was different. The sun flared, then bent inward. Not from gravity, from memory. As if it had just remembered something terrible. All 17 ships began to fail. Not from damage, from forgetting what they were. Logs overwritten. Crew identities erased. Synthetic AI began to dissolve their own cores. Then Earth sent its final message, across all channels, in all languages, in one voice. You have seen what sleeps beneath our skin. Do not knock again. On Earth, Cade stood within the spiral. His body was no longer burning. It was settling. The transformation was complete. But it wasn't a mutation. It was a reversion. The human form, perfected not by evolution, but by design. The architects had made him as a template, a reset switch, a reminder. And now the rest of the galaxy finally understood. Humanity wasn't trying to dominate. They were trying to contain. Across the council systems, panic erupted. The Purity fleet's failure leaked. 17 ships erased. A strike that never landed. And Earth untouched, undeterred, evolving. Some species called for surrender. Others called for war. A few whispered of joining Earth instead, of kneeling before the firewall. But deep beyond the rift, something else was stirring. Something that had felt Earth's pulse echo into the void. And it was curious. It hadn't moved in millennia. Now it turned. It didn't take long for the galaxy to fracture. The loss of the Purity fleet wasn't just a military failure. It was a psychological collapse. 17 warships from different species, armed with the most secret and devastating technology, had simply vanished without resistance. Erased not by force, but by something older, something that seemed to bend the very concept of reality. The Council tried to contain it. They lied, called it an accident, blamed a solar flare, said it was a rogue black hole that had destabilized the fleet's path. But the galaxy wasn't listening anymore. Across every major quadrant, riots sparked in alien cities. Protests, uprisings, not for Earth, but for truth. People didn't want war. They wanted to know what Earth had seen, what Cade Nolan had revealed, and what the Council was still hiding. Meanwhile, on the dark side of Titan's fourth moon, Cade stood before a panel of monitors, watching the galaxy shake from 1,000 angles. Civil unrest, fleet defections, species that had stood silent for generations were now choosing sides. Some were leaning toward Earth, not out of allegiance, but out of fear, a fear that Earth had been keeping them alive, and no one knew how long that would last. Others were planning to strike again. Quietly, with proxies, mercenaries, biological weapons. Cade didn't react. He just watched until the signal came. It started with a frequency spike in the old Mimir Deep Station, a derelict human listening post in orbit around a dead dwarf star. For years, it had just drifted, picking up background noise and space static, a relic of Earth's early days in space. Then, suddenly, it detected a pattern. Not a language, a rhythm, not binary, not organic, but something else. A sequence of pulses spaced out like breaths, timed to human heartbeats. The message lasted just 7 seconds. Then the station melted, not exploded, not sabotaged. The structure disassembled itself, atom by atom, like it had been waiting for that signal to activate its death. But before it dissolved, it sent the message to Earth. Cade stood silently as it played on loop. 7 seconds of pulses, 7 beats, each one louder than the last. The same rhythm that played in the mirror core when it awakened. "It's the rift," he said, staring at the dark screen. Behind him, Revenant Zero stirred. "It knows we've changed," the creature said, voice deep and unnatural. Mara Delane, still confined to her wheelchair, rubbed her temples. "It's not just watching anymore. It's reaching." On the outer edges of galactic space, in the ruins of the Kasari Expanse, something began to move. A colony lost 2 centuries ago to an unknown force, declared uninhabitable. Nothing but radiation storms and crumbled cities. Now, lights flickered in its upper atmosphere. Not ships, not life, but echoes. Like ghosts trying to reassemble themselves from memory. A long-forgotten distress signal began broadcasting. "They're waking up. The firewall is unstable. They're waking up. They remember us." Cade didn't wait for the council to react. He knew they wouldn't, not fast enough, so he began something unthinkable. Not diplomacy, not conquest, a summoning. He called for survivors, from every species, from every planet scarred by unexplained anomalies, mass disappearances, or failed terraforming projects, from colonies that had lived near gravitational distortions or magnetic black zones, places the council labeled accidents. He wanted the people who had lived through impossible things and survived. He called it the Pale Conquered. Not an army, a testimony. The first to arrive was a woman from the Volary Nebula, a fringe world where the atmosphere sometimes sang. She had lost her family in an unexplained atmospheric inversion. But she still heard them, sometimes in her dreams. She said their voices matched the pulse Cade had received. Then came a survivor from the Vorak Dunes, a dry world where 800 miners had vanished in one night. He had clawed his way out of the sand with eyes burned black and memories of something climbing out of his skin, trying to replace him. And then a child, barely speaking, found floating in space in a sealed escape pod, 20 years after his generation ship disappeared, still alive, unaged. Each one carried something inside them, not contamination, not possession, resonance. They had survived contact with the architects. They didn't know what that meant yet, but they were changing, and so was Earth. The council watched with growing dread, not because of what Cade was building, but because of what it wasn't. There were no weapons, no threats, no demands, only witnesses. And that was far worse, because witnesses meant truth, and truth was harder to erase than war. Behind closed doors, panic turned to desperation. Species that had supported Project Purity now found themselves exposed, old rivalries reawakened, blame spread like wildfire. Some began to suggest what had once been unthinkable. We should go through the rift first. Confront it, bind it, or bargain with it. But they didn't realize. It was already coming through. On Earth, deep inside the mirror core chamber, the pulses began again, this time faster, louder. Revenant Zero stood perfectly still. Mara watched as her instruments failed one by one. Cade stepped forward, closing his eyes, and then he understood. The pulses weren't just warnings. They were coordinates. He projected them into the air, a section of uncharted space. Beyond mapped territory, beyond black zones, a place the council had labeled a soft void, a stretch of cosmos where nothing ever happened, but something was buried there. A door. Cade opened a secure channel and transmitted only one phrase to the Pale Concord members. The rift is sending us an invitation. Not everyone would survive the journey, and Cade knew that, But it wasn't about survival anymore. It was about understanding what humanity was actually built for. They weren't chosen because they were noble, or smart, or brave. They were chosen because they were resilient enough to look into the dark and not blink. The rift was waking up, and Earth had the only eyes wide enough to see. The ship built to breach the void had no name. It wasn't a warship. It wasn't a vessel of science. It was grown, fused from a blend of Earth's most secret biotech and something else pulled from beneath the Pacific Trench. Something not listed in any human database. It pulsed like it was alive. Its walls were bone and crystal. Its control systems responded to thought, not commands. The Pale Concord stood at the center of it. 27 beings from 15 different species. Survivors. Changed, scarred. Chosen not by rank or politics, but by pain. Cade Nolan stood among them, his body calmer now, but still bearing the flickers of energy that the mirror core had burned into his veins. Behind his eyes, the coordinates burned. In front of him, a black sea of space. Beyond it, the rift. The galactic map called it the soft void. But every culture had their own name for it. The still wound, the memory bleed, the eye that forgot. The place that waits. Now, humanity had a name for it, too. Origin. The moment they crossed the border into the soft void, time changed. Not stopped, not accelerated. Just wrong. There were no stars, no gravity, no temperature, no up, no down. The ship moved by intention, not engine. The survivors stood in silence, letting the ship breathe through them. Some fell into memories. Some into nightmares. Cade held himself together by focusing on one thing. The signal. It came in steady now, like a heartbeat. Thumb, thumb, thumb. But not his heartbeat. The universe's. 4 hours into the void, they saw the first shape. It didn't make sense. It floated in nothingness, yet cast a shadow. It moved without motion. It had angles where angles shouldn't exist, a structure, massive, dormant. It was made of black stone and silver veins. No visible entrances, no lights. Just a single line etched across its surface. You remember us because we let you. Cade reached out, and the ship responded, forming a bridge of bone and living glass to the structure. The Pale Concord followed him out. None of them spoke, not even the ones with multiple tongues, because the air itself was thinking. They entered the structure through what looked like an incision, not a door, a wound, not a passage. Inside was a hall lined with mirrors, not reflective, but responsive. Each mirror showed them not themselves, but moments they didn't survive. A Kasari refugee saw her death in a cave-in that never happened. A Volari girl saw herself vanish into song, becoming air. One of the twins from the Siroven saw himself devoured by fire, eyes open the whole time. But they were alive. They had lived. Cade stepped past his mirror and saw nothing, just darkness. When he blinked, it whispered, "We're still writing yours." At the heart of the structure, they found a circle, floating, turning, made of light but not shining. It pulsed in the same 7-beat rhythm. Mara Delane, now barely conscious from the strain of the journey, gasped. "This is it," she whispered. "The architect root, the origin node, the first anchor, not a weapon, not a machine, a question." Cade stepped into the circle, and the universe stopped pretending. The hall vanished. The others vanished. He was alone. No, not alone. Before him stood a man. At least that's what it chose to be. Human. Not quite. Too tall, too still. His eyes were black wells of stars. His skin was cracked like old marble, filled with veins of red light. He smiled. "You took longer than we expected?" Cade tried to speak, but his throat locked. The figure raised a hand. "No need. You're not here to speak. He gestured to the dark around them. "You're here to remember." And Cade remembered. The truth didn't come as a revelation. It came as a realignment. Everything he'd ever known shifted to fit around it, like bones snapping into their proper places. The rift wasn't a tear. It was a test, a checkpoint, placed by beings who came before everything else. Not gods, not creators, architects, entities so vast, so old, they couldn't be perceived, only filtered. They didn't build life, they filtered it. Sentient species arose across galaxies, but only those who could survive the trauma of proximity to the rift would evolve beyond mere existence. Humanity was forged as a countermeasure. Not to fight the architects, but to recognize them, to bear witness, to keep the galaxy from forgetting what waited behind the veil. Cade had passed the test, but the others wouldn't. Not yet. The architect reached toward him, not touching, just indicating. Behind Cade, a wall of light revealed itself. Not white, not golden, a shifting gray filled with every face Cade had ever seen, every life he'd touched, every decision that broke him. "You are the Echo Bearer. You hold the weight of what was never supposed to return. They will call you Destroyer. But your purpose is remembrance, because we forget." And then the voice was gone. Cade opened his eyes. He was back in the hall. Mara gasped beside him, blood trickling from her nose. The rest of the Pale Conquered lay stunned, eyes wide. Each of them had seen something. Each of them had touched a piece of what slept behind the rift. The origin node pulsed once more, and then shattered into dust. No sound, no explosion, just gone. The void began to collapse behind them. The structure faded. And Earth called them home. The ship re-emerged into normal space 5 days later, but only 7 minutes had passed in galactic time, and the galaxy was on fire. Whole systems were defecting from the Council. Species were splitting, some declaring neutrality, some swearing allegiance to Earth, and some, those that had watched the Pale Conquered vanish, were beginning to pray. Not to gods, but to witnesses. Cade stood on Earth once more, changed. Not stronger, not smarter, not more powerful, just clearer. He knew now what came next. Earth wasn't here to win. It was here to remember. And remembrance would cost the galaxy everything, because something had started to move behind the rift, and it had begun to speak Cade's name. The rift opened without a sound, no shockwave, no cosmic anomaly, no blaring signal, just stillness. Every sensor in every quadrant registered nothing, a perfect void, no radiation, no mass, no gravity, and yet everyone felt it, from the barren moons of the Veldry Ascendancy to the oceans of Iridia Prime, to the dark sky over Earth itself. Every sentient creature froze at once, as if caught in some ancient instinct they no longer remembered. Even those who had no word for fear felt it now. The rift was not just open, it was awake. At the Council core world, alarms screamed, not because of attack, but because of unreadable input. The rift was no longer a singularity, it had expanded. A field, larger than 4 solar systems, had emerged around it. Nothing could enter, nothing could escape. Except one signal, a transmission broadcast through quantum entanglement in every known language. Witness has been prepared. Remembrance has begun. Final cognition pending. The message came with no coordinates, but it had a target, Ambassador Cade Nolan. He stood alone on the plains of Tartus, a wide stretch of scorched earth in the ruins of what was once old Siberia. The sky above was wrong, swirling slowly, stars bending around something that wasn't there. The witnesses stood far back, silent, still. Even Revenant Zaro kept its distance, sensing something older than itself moving through the soil. Cade knelt and touched the ground. It was warm, like flesh. The planet was listening. So was something else. Then it arrived. Not a ship, not a fleet, a shape, folded into the air, a spiral made from light and memory, transparent and terrible, bigger than mountains but casting no shadow. It didn't walk, it simply was. Cade didn't blink, didn't move. The spiral pulsed once, and a voice filled the sky. You have remembered well, human, but remembrance is not enough. Now you must choose. Time warped, space bent, and suddenly Cade stood somewhere else. The planes were gone. He floated in a chamber of mirrors, like the architect structure in the rift, only now the mirrors showed others. The galaxy, the civilizations, the ones who feared, the ones who hated, the ones who bowed. Each mirror showed their future, shattered by a different choice. If Earth ruled, if Earth retaliated, if Earth became the firewall fully, every outcome ended in fire, collapse. Endless war. Cade stepped back. One mirror flickered. It showed silence, a galaxy without war. No voices, no songs, no thought. This, said the voice, is peace through stagnation. A galaxy without fire, without failure, without choice. Your species has been tested for one purpose, to carry memory, to protect chaos. Now we ask you, do you protect the galaxy from us? Or do you protect it from itself? Cade breathed slowly. The architect's meaning was clear. The rift was opening for a reason. The architects were returning not to conquer, but to cleanse. Wipe everything. Let it start again. Unless humanity stopped them. But stopping them would mean changing Earth forever. Turning humanity into something else. A vessel of containment. A final firewall. No more nations, no more war, no more growth. Just preservation. Cade's hands shook. The choice wasn't power, it was burden. Back on Earth, the rift split wider. Across the galaxy, people screamed. Some clawed their eyes out, unable to endure the visions pouring into their minds. Others fell silent, paralyzed by memories they never lived. Whole systems dropped offline. Ships turned inside out. Artificial intelligences begged for deletion, all waiting on one man, one choice. Cade looked up into the void. He saw faces, not gods, just echoes. Billions of civilizations before this one, all erased, all buried. Their only mistake. They forgot. Earth hadn't. That was why they had been chosen, not because they were good, but because they refused to let go. He closed his eyes. He saw his mother, his first breath in space, his first lie, his last love. He saw the council guards breaking under his presence. The Purity Fleet dissolving in the dark, the Mirror Corps whispering its final warning. He saw a child on a dirt floor on a forgotten colony, telling stories about stars. And then he saw the rift, waiting. I choose, he whispered. The air trembled. The architect leaned closer. Say it. Cade opened his eyes, tears burning down his face. I choose to remember. The rift stopped expanding. The pulse ceased. The architect's shape began to unravel, folding back into thought. Then we are at peace. We will remain buried. But remember this. Peace is a memory. And memory is pain. Guard it well, human. For next time, we will not ask. Earth lit up. Not in fire, in connection. Satellites resynced, colonies stabilized. The Pale Conquered survivors all collapsed at once. Safely. Alive. Changed forever. Mara Delane, far away in her resting pod, smiled through her tears before her heart finally stopped. Revenant Zero dropped to its knees and whispered a word no one had taught it. Home, the council broke, its power shattered, but not in war, in truth. Species began rewriting their doctrines. Old enemies embraced. Fleets turned inward. Wounds opened and began to heal because they had seen the choice and the one who made it. Cade Nolan never returned to politics. He disappeared from public sight 2 days later. Some say he walked into the rift. Some say he became part of Earth itself. Others say he died. But one thing is certain. Wherever the rift stirs, wherever civilizations begin to forget, he returns, not as a man, but as a memory. Final transmission received from the pale conquered memory beacon. Humanity was never meant to lead. We were meant to hurt, to carry, to scream when others stayed silent. And in that pain we preserved everything. We are the scar the galaxy needs to remember its wounds. We are the firewall. We are the witness. We are humanity.